Okay, so good evening, friends. I want us to talk about our lesson on leukemia. Okay, I want us to continue, to look at the non-leukemic myeloproliferative neoplasm. Okay, the non-leukemic myeloproliferative neoplasm. So if you watch my videos on YouTube, you get to know that I've made video for chronic leukemia, acute leukemia, and I want us to also look at the non-leukemic myeloproliferative neoplasm. Meaning non-leukemic means that they are not, as a result of leukemia. Okay, so we talk about them, and I think at the end of the lesson you get to know some other myeloproliferative neoplasm which are not as a result of leukemia. Very, very important. So let's look at the types that we have. So we talk about the Polycythemia Vera. Okay, Polycythemia Vera. So then we also talk about the essential thrombocytopenia. Essential thrombocytopenia. Of course, we talk about the myelofibrosis with myeloid metaplasia. Okay, very important. Then we also look at the lymphoproliferative and plasma cell disorders. But a lot of topics. Okay, but in this video I will only talk about the Polycythemia Vera. So I'll make other videos for essential thrombocytopenia and then myelofibrosis and the lymphoproliferative disorders. So let's talk about the Polycythemia Vera. So polycythemia, very important. So polycythemia actually talks about so polycythemia, very important. So polycythemia is defined as an increase in the hemoglobin concentration above the upper limits of normal for the patient age and sex. Okay, so males have their range for hemoglobin concentration, and females have their own range. Okay, so when the hemoglobin exceeds the upper limit of the reference range for either males or females, then we say that there is what? Polycythemia. Take note of that. So polycythemia is defined as an increase in the hemoglobin concentration above the upper limit of normal for patient's age and sex. Okay, so your patient will come to your lab, you run the full blood count. In May, you expect the hemoglobin to be 13.5 to, let's say, 18. So but if the hemoglobin exceeds the 18, which is the upper limit of the reference range, it means that definitely your patient, okay, may suffer from polycythemia. Okay, so as we proceed and go through this lesson, you appreciate how it occurs, the effects, and some laboratory investigation that we need to do. Very important. So hemoglobin level. So in males, if the hemoglobin exceeds 18.5, then we say that that patient is likely to have polycythemia. Okay, because 18.5 is the upper limit for males. That is the hemoglobin range. Okay, very important. So if a male come to your facility, runs FVC, find out that the hemoglobin concentration is above 18.5 gram per deciliter, you suspect polycythemia. Okay, now if the hemoglobin exceeds 16.5 in females, 16.5 in females, then we can say that that patient, being a female, also have polycythemia. Okay, so talking about polycythemia, the reference ranges of hemoglobin concentration in both males and females is very important. Okay, always remember that in males, whenever the hemoglobin exceeds 18.5 gram per deciliter, then there is polycythemia. In females, if it exceeds 16.5, then there is polycythemia. Now we can classify polycythemia into two categories. Okay, very important. So we can have the absolute polycythemia, and we can also have the relative or pseudo polycythemia, which is very important. So what I'm trying to say is that talking about polycythemia, okay, we can have the absolute polycythemia and relative or pseudo polycythemia. Now someone may ask, what does it mean to say a polycythemia is like absolute, or a polycythemia is relative or pseudo polycythemia? So I'm going to take my time to explain them one after the other, which is very important. Okay, so talking about the absolute polycythemia. Now absolute polycythemia or electrocytosis, polycythemia is more or less like erythrocytosis. I hope you guys remember erythrocytosis. When there's increase, okay, in the production of RBC, increased RBC concentration, we say you have erythrocytosis. So absolute polycythemia or erythrocytosis, in which the red cell mass or the red cell volume is raised to greater than 125% of the expected for body mass and gender. Okay, so if a patient visits your facility, okay, and you find out that the red blood cell mass or the red blood cell volume, okay, is raised and is greater than 125% of the expected value of body mass and gender, you can suspect absolute polycythemia. Remember that here there is increase in red cell mass, not plasma volume. Okay, red cell mass. And I hope you know the difference between red cell and plasma. When a patient visits your facility, or let me put it this way, when you spin a sample in an EDTA tube, okay, you get to know that there is separation. Okay, so you have the upper layer, which is straw color, which is the plasma. We have the sediment, which is a red blood cell. In between the plasma and the red blood cell, we have the Buffy coat. Okay, so what am I trying to say? Sometimes you will see that the plasma is, increased as compared to the sediment, which is the red blood cell. But sometimes you will see that the red blood cell is what increased, but the plasma volume is what normal. In that case, we may suspect absolute polycythemia, because we are saying that in absolute polycythemia there is increase in what red cell mass, which is sometimes can be greater than 125% of the expected for body mass and what gender. Okay, so take note of that. So red cell mass is raised, but the plasma volume is what normal, like I said. Then the absolute polycythemia can be divided into two. Okay, so when we take absolute polycythemia, can be divided into two. You can have the primary erythrocytosis, okay, and the secondary erythrocytosis. Let me explain the primary erythrocytosis. Now the primary erythrocytosis, okay, it actually affects the erythroid progenitor cells. You understand that? So the erythroid progenitor cells show enhanced response to cytokines. So what does it mean to say erythroid progenitor cells? You remember erythropoiesis, Okay, the progenitor cell that leads to the formation of what? Red blood cell. They are the electroid progenitor cells. Now, in primary erythrocytosis, okay, the condition is associated with the electroid progenitor cells. You understand that? And so this condition can be acquired or can be congenital. Okay, you can acquire it or it can be congenital. Very, very important. So always remember that for the primary erythrocytosis, okay, it affects the electroid progenitor cells, and once again it can be congenital or it can be acquired. Very, very important. Now we can also get a secondary erythrocytosis. The secondary erythrocytosis. Now the secondary erythrocytosis, the factors are outside the electroid compartment. It means that the factors that is causing the increased level of erythrocytes, okay, it's not associated with the electroid progenitor cells. Very, very important here. So folks, what I'm trying to say is that talking about absolute polycythemia, where there is increase in red cell mass but normal plasma volume, okay, we can have them in two cases. They can be divided into two. You can have the primary erythrocytosis and of course the secondary erythrocytosis. Remember that I said the primary erythrocytosis, okay, the condition is associated with the electroid progenitor cells, okay, and then it can be congenital or acquired. But for the secondary erythrocytosis, okay, the factors are outside the electroid compartment. Different factors come together to cause the erythrocytosis, which we are going to see very soon. So talking about the relative or pseudo polycythemia, okay, that one, the red cell mass is normal but plasma volume is decreased. Remember that. So looking at the absolute, we are saying that the red cell mass is what? Increased, but the plasma volume is normal. But here it's not like that. The red cell mass is normal but the plasma volume is what? Decreased. Take note of the two, okay? The examiners, they are very bad. They can ask you, they can confuse you with that. So always remember that in relative pseudo polycythemia, the red cell mass is not increased but it's normal, but the plasma volume is rather what? Decreased. Okay, very, very important. So it is caused by plasma volume concentration, okay, and then more common than absolute polycythemia, okay. So always remember that relative polycythemia is more common than absolute, okay. So more common in the sense that it occurs more than the absolute. So most of the times in the lab you see that you centrifuge your sample, for everything you see that the red cell mass is normal but your plasma volume will be less. Sometimes too can be cases where the red cell mass will be high but the plasma volume will be normal. In that case, you talk about the absolute and then relative, but always remember that the relative, okay, occurs more often as compared to the absolute. Very important. Okay, so this point is very important. Pseudo polycythemia or the relative polycythemia can be caused by, one, we say wrong sample mixing, okay. So maybe the phlebotomist who is taking the sample, upon taking the sample, he or she didn't ensure accurate mixing of the sample. So you run your full blood count and you see pseudo polycythemia, increased volume of WBC, okay, which may not be true, maybe as a result of wrong sample mixing. You understand that? That is why I, for instance, I'm advocate against nurses and other people bringing samples to the lab for lab test. For all you know, maybe the nurse is in hurry, the nurse, so there's the way she or he or she took the sample, maybe not, they took the sample at the wrong way. You understand? Good. So they will also bring the sample for you in the lab, and you also use it to run your FBC test. And before you realize, you are getting increased level of the RBCs, which may not be a representative value for the patient. You understand? And so it is advisable that lab scientists should always take samples from the wards, okay, and make sure that samples are mixed well before performing such tests for patient, okay. And sometimes too, dehydration can also cause pseudo polycythemia. Dehydration, of course, there is loss of water from the body, you understand, and you know that blood is made up of plasma and cells, and plasma contains about 99% water, you understand. So therefore, if you are dehydrated, it means you are going to lose water, and when you lose water, it means the plasma volume will also be decrease, and it supports the fact that red cell mass is normal but plasma volume is decreased. So anyone who is dehydrated will also have problem with plasma volume, which will result in pseudo polycythemia. Take note of that. So diuretics, maybe someone who is on prolonged diuretic therapy, long-term diuretic therapy. Diuretics like mannitol and azoxorbide, those osmotic diuretics, they cause loss of fluid from extracellular compartment, and so you are going to lose water from the plasma compartment, and plasma volume will be low, and so there will be pseudo polycythemia. And that is why you must ask questions when a patient visits you in your facility. Try to rule out all these things that we are talking about. You understand? Very important. And also prolonged use of tourniquet. When you are taking the sample, when you apply the tourniquet, someone can even receive a call whilst the tourniquet is at the sample collection site. For all you know, it may cause false positive result. Okay, very important. Sometimes the sample that we take in ADTA tube, instead of running the full blood count first, we run some serological test before the full blood count, and that can lead to pseudo polycythemia. Alcoholism can also lead to pseudo polycythemia. So it is very important to know and understand all these things, so that when you are working, you work with your common sense, you understand, so that you won't cause fear and panic in any patient. Very important. Okay, so let's talk about the secondary electrocytosis. Now we know the pseudo electrocytosis. Remember I said the absolute polycythemia can be grouped into two, okay, the primary and the secondary. Okay, for the primary, we know the cause, that it is as a result of the electroid progenitor cells, okay, and we've spoken about the relative, which is the pseudo polycythemia and the causes. So let's move more into the secondary electrocytosis, which is very important. So the electrocytosis is due to an underlying condition. So remember that here the electrocytosis is due to an underlying condition. So it's not as a result of it's not as a result of problem coming from the electroid progenitor cells. No, there is an underlying condition which is causing the excessive production of what? RBC, the electrocytosis. So it can be congenital defect of oxygen sensing pathway, which I will explain very soon. Okay, it can be a gene mutation in VHL, von Hippel-Lymphoprotein. Okay, von Hippel-Lymphoprotein, von Hippel-Lymphoprotein. I will talk about the function of this, which leads to juvenile erythrocytosis. It can be as a result of PHD2 mutations, HIF2 alpha mutations, and other congenital defects. Okay, So all these defects can lead to secondary erythrocytosis. But how does it occur? Let me take you back to erythropoiesis. Okay, so if you look at this cell lineage, the hematopoietic stem cell will give rise to the erythrocyte. Okay, but what I want you to take from here is that erythropoiesis is regulated by a hormone. What's that hormone? I hope you remember. Called erythropoietin. Okay, erythropoietin can be found in the kidney. So erythropoiesis is enhanced by activities of this hormone called erythropoietin. And of course, 90% of erythropoietin is found in the peritubular cells of the kidney. Very important. And 10% in the liver and elsewhere. Okay, so take note. Now let me explain this. When there is hypoxia, hypoxia means your tissues are deficient in oxygen. Remember that before tissues will even get oxygen, it is the red blood cells that carries oxygen to all parts of the body because it contains the hemoglobin. Okay, so when you are hypoxic, when you have low level of red blood cell, it means your tissue are not getting enough oxygen, and so the body will try to produce a lot of oxygen by producing erythrocyte, RBC. But how does it occur? So when you are hypoxia, what happens is that we call something hypoxia inducible factors. And these hypoxia inducible factors are grouped into two. We have alpha and beta. Okay, so these hypoxia inducible factors, which are called HIF. Okay, anytime you are hypoxic, the hypoxia will stimulate the synthesis of hypoxia inducible factors called the HIF. So this is what I'm talking about. When you are hypoxia, the hypoxia will induce synthesis of hypoxia inducible factors HIF, the alpha and the beta. What will they do? The hypoxia inducible factors, they stimulate erythropoietin production. And of course, you know what erythropoietin is coming to do? It will cause erythropoiesis, the production of RBC. So always remember this. When you are hypoxic, when you have low level of RBC, okay, the hypoxia will induce synthesis of HIF, alpha and beta. HIF means hypoxia inducible factor. Now when this HIF comes into circulation, what it does is that it causes this production, or stimulate the production of what? Erythropoietin, a hormone that facilitates RBC production. Remember, erythropoietin is found in the kidney. Now, when HIF performs its function, after HIF have performed its function, okay, it shouldn't remain in circulation, or X. There will be excess production of what? Erythropoietin, which will cause electrocytosis, abnormal production of RBC. So we mean that there must be something that will degrade HIF, that will destroy HIF, that will clear HIF from the circulation. But what is that? What protein will do that? What protein will, terminate the action of HIF? Because if you don't get any protein to terminate the action of HIF, what is going to happen is that HIF will still be in circulation, and there will be excess production of RBC. And so it is very important to destroy HIF. So what proteins is that? What protein will do that for us? Okay, so we say HIF is degraded by von Hippel-Indel protein. Von Hippel-Indel protein, remember that it is a protein that degrades HIF in circulation. Okay, it has a brother, okay, which also performs same function, but that one, it doesn't degrade HIF, but then it regulates HIF abundance. Okay, remember always that HIF, or von Hippel-Indel protein, degrades HIF, but it collides its other brother I'm going to talk about. Okay, it regulates HIF abundance. So whether HIF will go up or low is regulated by the other partner of von Hippel protein. What's that I'm talking about? Okay, so I'm talking about the plural hydroxylase domain. In some books you see 2 is attached to it, right? So you have the plural hydroxylase domain. It regulates HIF abundance. So I've spoken about 4 things which are very important, you shouldn't forget. The first one I spoke about is hypoxia. Okay, hypoxia, when tissues are deficient in oxygen. So now you have to start thinking about, okay, so what will cause tissue to be deficient in oxygen? One, you can think about heart disease, because it is the heart that pumps the blood to all parts of the body. So if your heart develop an issue, for instance circulatory diseases, it means your heart can no longer pump the blood, and so therefore there is going to be what? Hypoxia. Okay. 2, lung disease. Remember that in the lung is where oxygen is abundant. Remember, the alveolar section of the lung, there's a lot of oxygen, and so if you have lung problem where exchange of this gaseous exchange cannot take place, it means that the heart, okay, cannot oxygenate the blood, because remember we have oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. So at the left ventricle of the heart, or at the left portion of the heart, okay, there is circulation where deoxygenated blood move to the pulmonary artery to the lungs to pick oxygen. Okay, so in the alveoli, if there is any problem with the lungs, your oxygen will be suppressed, and therefore hypoxia will occur. So I want you to put these 2 things in mind. Okay, heart diseases and the lung diseases can cause hypoxia, and whenever there is hypoxia, what happens? Remember, there is synthesis of hypoxia inducible factors. Hypoxia inducible factors, which we call them HIF, alpha and beta. What are their functions? HIF alpha and beta function to stimulate erythropoietin. Erythropoietin, which is the protein which causes production of what? RBC. Okay, so hypoxia leads to production of HIF alpha and beta, stimulation of erythropoietin, then erythropoietin will cause production of what? RBC. Now, once HIF has performed its function, it must leave circulation to maintain normal volume of RBC, or else if HIF is maintained in circulation, there is going to be excess production of RBC, which we don't want, which is a bad condition. Okay, and so what protein degrades HIF from circulation? Von Hippel protein, von Hippel protein, von Hippel protein, which is simply put VHP, von Hippel protein, is a protein that degrades HIF in circulation. Very, very important. And then another protein called plural hydroxylase domain, plural hydroxylase domain, PHD. That one regulates HIF abundance in circulation. So folks, if you understand this concept, okay, secondary electrocytosis will be very simple for you. Remember that all these things that I'm saying is not affecting the erythroid progenitor cells. It is outside the erythroid compartment. Okay, so different factors are causing the erythrocytosis. That is why it is called secondary erythrocytosis. So what are the possible deductions that we can take from this erythropoiesis process? One common deduction that we can make is remember that anything or any condition that will lead to impaired ability of von Hippel protein, a protein that degrades HIF or hypoxia inducible factors, will lead to erythrocytosis. It is true, because HIP is there to degrade if HIP is unable to be degraded, or if von Hippolinoprotein is unable to degrade hypoxia inducible factor, okay, it will still remain in circulation, causes excess erythropoiesis to be produced, therefore increases what? Erythropoiesis. So any condition that impaired the ability of von Hippolinoprotein will lead to erythropoiesis. An example of such condition is what? Von Hippolinoprotein gene mutation. So whenever there is mutation in von Hippolinoprotein, it leads to tuberous erythrocytosis. Always remember that. 2. Another condition that impairs your ability to produce prolyl hydroxylase domain will also lead to erythropoiesis, because if PhD ability is impaired, it means that HIF can also remain in circulation all the time, okay, and it will lead to erythropoiesis. And then conditions like PhD2 mutation can lead to that, okay. And any disease that affect the lungs and the heart, this one I spoke about that. So chronic lung diseases, carbon monoxide poisoning, all these diseases, heavy smoking, emphysema, pericarditis, all those diseases can lead to hypoxia, which can cause excess production of RBC. So this needs understanding, okay. If you understand the concept, I think it will be very, very simple for you. So this process are all occurring outside the erectile compartment. That is why they are regarded as what? Secondary erythrocytosis. Very, very important. Very, very important. Okay, so having done with erythrocytosis, let's talk about the malignant one, Polycythemia Vera. Okay, Polycythemia Vera. So Polycythemia Vera is basically a malignant condition, unlike the secondary and then the primary polycythemia we just spoke about. This one is a malignant condition, okay, very important. So in Polycythemia Vera, the increase in red cell volume is caused by a clonal malignancy of marrow stem cell. So in the bone marrow, instead of electric progenitor cell to differentiate to give us the erythrocyte, okay, or the common myeloid progenitor cells to divide and give us the necessary blood cells, there is a clonal malignancy when it comes to Polycythemia Vera, okay. So there is a increase in red cell volume, which is as a result of a clonal malignancy. So it could be that the clones, okay, the malignant cells may clear the normal cells from the bone marrow and predominate. And you know, of course, whenever malignant cell predominates in bone marrow, they cause excess production of these malignant cells. So the RBC production, which will result as a result of this malignancy, okay, it's no good because they are malignant cells. So in Polycythemia Vera, the patient will present with a lot of, when you run the hemoglobin concentration or FBC for the patient, you see high increase of hemoglobin, which is a disease state. So you talk about that, okay. Now it's caused by a somatic mutation in the hematopoietic stem cell that gives hematopoietic stem cell a proliferative advantage, okay. So there is a mutation, there is a somatic mutation. We talk about that mutation, okay, very important. So the mutation is the VAR 617 phenyl JAK2 mutation, okay. This is the somatic mutation we're talking about, VAR 617 phenyl JAK2, okay. So it is a mutation in the hematopoietic stem cell, okay. So in Polycythemia Vera, always remember that there is a mutation, which is the JAK2 mutation, okay. The valence 617 phenylalanine JAK2 mutation is present in hematopoietic cells in over 95% patients, okay. and then there is 12 about the remainder is a mutation in the exon 12. Okay, very important. So always remember that in Polycythemia Vera there is a mutation, okay, JAK2 mutation, which is characterized by this. Okay, and there is overproduction of cells. So because it's a malignant condition, the malignant cells causes overproduction of WBCs, platelets, and other cells. Okay, remember that in the secondary polycythemia, it is not a malignant condition, so only RBC level will increase. But in Polycythemia rubra vera, it is a malignant condition, so therefore there is going to be overproduction of cells, and those cells can be the WBCs and the platelets. Very important. So one of the management procedure for such individual is therapeutic phlebotomy. Okay, so a patient with JAK2 mutation having the Polycythemia vera, they may be feeling headache, blurred vision. So what they do is normally they come to the lab for therapeutic phlebotomy. In that case, you take blood from them and you can keep it for your culture, you throw it away. Such blood we don't transfuse to other patients because they're malignant cells, you understand. So there are a lot of situations where people with Polycythemia vera, okay, they will come and then they will come and donate in the lab, then lab technicians will transfuse their blood for other patients. How can you transfuse malignant cells for someone? So please, it is not advisable. Very, very important. So the question here is, how is this, the Polycythemia vera, how is it different from secondary electrocytosis? Remember always that the secondary electrocytosis, okay, there is predominant increase in RBC count, since erythropoiesis is basically for RBC, because in secondary erythrocytosis, okay, the problem is associated with excess erythropoietin production. You understand that? So it is not a malignant condition, and so if there is excess erythropoietin production, there is always going to be increased level of what? RBC, red blood cells. Okay, but in Polycythemia rubra vera, there is an increase in cells, which can be platelets, which can be WBC, as a result of the malignancy. So take note of the two. Very, very important. So diagnosis. So JAK2 positive can be diagnosed when the person has hemoglobin and hematocrit levels above the upper limit. Okay, so I've explained the limits. So we have the A1, A2 classification. For A1, there is high hematocrit, which is about 52% in men and 48% in women. Okay, or there will be raised red blood cell mass about 25%. So for A2, they check for the mutation in JAK2. Okay, JAK2 mutation. So all these are sub classification when it comes to the diagnosis. Okay, when it comes to diagnosis. So A1, we've spoken about that. A2, JAK2 mutation. A3, okay, they check for no cause of secondary erythrocytosis. A4, if there is palpable splenomegaly. A5, presence of an acquired genetic abnormality. That one have to exclude the BCR-ABL gene as seen in common chronic myeloid leukemia. Okay, so B1, thrombocytosis above 450 microliter. B2, check for neutrophil leukocytosis. Okay, neutrophil count is above 10 microliter. And B3, radiological evidence of splenomegaly. And B4, endogenous erythroid colonies or low serum erythropoietin. So diagnosis require A1 plus A2. Okay, so raised cell mass, absence of JAK2 mutation, and A3 is no cause of secondary erythrocytosis. Okay, plus either A or B criteria. So very important. So clinical features. The disease is mainly for adults. Okay, so disease of adults with equal gender distribution. So take note, this disease is mainly for adults with equal gender distribution. Take note of that. So symptoms are due to hyperviscosity, hypermetabolism of hypervolemia. Okay, so hypermetabolism because of malignant cells are predominating the bone marrow, so metabolism also increase. Okay, so this patient, they normally comes with headache, blurred vision, night sweat, and dyspnea. Okay, very important. So sometimes there is pruritus after hot bath, there is pretoric appearance, splenomegaly. Okay, enlargement of the spleen because of tissue infiltration. Okay, hemorrhage or thrombosis, and gout. The gout is as a result of the hypermetabolism. Okay, so definitely there will be uric acid in the serum of such patients. So lab findings: hemoglobin, RBC count, hematocrit, and red cell volume are increased. So hemoglobin is increased, red blood cell will be increased, hematocrit will be increased, and then red cell distribution width also tends to be higher than normal. So one of the common laboratory findings is this. Okay, so we take care of that. And the neutrophil leukocytosis is present. In one of two cases, you will see neutrophil leukocytosis, left sheet. Then thrombocytosis, that's abnormal platelet function. Okay, abnormal platelet function leads to thrombocytosis, and of course the JAK2 mutation is present in bone marrow and peripheral blood granulocytes. Okay, of course bone marrow is hypercellular with trilinage growth, and serum erythropoietin is low. So unlike the secondary erythrocytosis, this one, the serum erythropoietin is low. Okay, take note of that because it is a malignant condition. Plasma urate is increased because of the hypermetabolism. Okay, but sometimes LDH will be normal. Okay, so remember always that the plasma urate is increased. Now there is increased circulatory erythroid progenitor like colony forming unit E, colony and then BFUE. Okay, all these things, okay, can lead to or can be seen in patients with chronic Polycythemia Vera. Okay, so you take good care of that. So this is hypercellular smear. Okay, these are some platelets, these are some platelets, very important, and all these are the red blood cells. Okay, so we have this there. So the cells, the bone marrow smear or peripheral smear is hypercellular. Okay, so treatment. So the treatment is aimed at maintaining normal full blood count result. So you expect that the hematocrit will be less than 45% and the platelet will be less than 400 microliter. Okay, so that's the aim of the treatment. Venous suction helps to reduce hematocrit but not platelet count. Okay, so when you do venous suction, it helps to reduce hematocrit, can reduce platelet count. And then cytotoxic marrow suppression. Okay, cytotoxic marrow suppression, and sometimes hydroxyurea, busulfan, or pipobroman. Okay, all these are drugs that can prevent the condition. So low dose aspirin to reduce thrombotic tendencies. So thrombotic tendencies, maybe pains and other thrombotic conditions, you give the patient aspirin to reduce that. Okay, so that is the end. Let's solve these questions and we will close. So in this question, when you see the red color, it means false. This color also shows true. Okay, so this is false, this is true. So the first question says the cardiogram of a patient suffering from Philadelphia chromosome positive. Well, so after cytogenetics, what they get is the cardiogram. Like, it shows the arrangement of this, the cytoplasm. Okay, so where the translocation actually occur, you understand? So the cardiogram of a patient suffering from Philadelphia chromosome positive, A. So the chromosome 9 will appear to have a shorter queue. This one is not true. Okay, this one is not true. That's why it's in red. Chromosome 9 will not appear to have a shorter queue. Okay, because the chromosome 9 actually is the the one with the long arm, and then the chromosome 22 is the one with the short arm, and the transfusion or the fusion, the chromosome 9 brings the BCL. Okay, sorry, the chromosome 9 will bring the ABL gene, and the 22 will bring the BCR gene. Okay, take note of that. So this one is not true. Chromosome 21 will appear to have the longer. It's false. That one is the shorter one. Okay. So C, the chromosome 9 will have deletion of BCR region. So remember, it is not BCR. Chromosome 9 have the deletion of ABL, not BCR. So the examiners, they are bad in most questions. They can also bring ABL. So take note of that. And then chromosome 21 will have a fused BCR ABL gene. Okay. So all this is not true. The BCR ABL gene occurs on the chromosome 22, which is the Philadelphia chromosome. So all these, they are false. Now the question 2. Patient Wally, 44 years, is suffering from chronic myeloid leukemia. Now at diagnosis, his WBC count was 506 microliter. The hemoglobin was 3.2. Platelet count was 603. The technical considerations when managing this patient will include. Now the underlying word here is technical consideration. When you are managing this patient, what are some of the technical considerations? So transfusion immediately to correct anemia is not true. This is not a technical consideration. It's like here, this one you are giving a treatment, but it's not a technical consideration. Give soluble aspirin immediately to prevent thrombosis. This one is a treatment, but it is not a technical consideration. Therapeutic phlebotomy, no. So the laboratory should run FBC using pre-diluted sample. Okay, and I think this one is the technical consideration here. So number 3, the biochemical findings in a patient suffering from chronic granulocytic leukemia includes chronic granulocytic leukemia. Okay, so there is chronic granulocytic leukemia. Okay, so increased serum vitamin B12, which is true. Hyperuricemia, because of hypermetabolism, you see uric acid in the serum. Okay, so that one too is true there. First and second are true. Third, bilirubinemia. Now bilirubin is seen in the blood of or in the serum of patients who are undergoing hemolysis. Okay, so but chronic granulocytic leukemia is not a hemolytic episode. It's not a hemolytic condition, so you don't expect bilirubin here. Okay, increased cellular erythropoietin. Nope, this one erythropoietin will be low because it is mostly a malignant condition. Okay, so 4, causes of secondary electrocytosis. So causes of secondary I just spoke about that. A, defective von Hippel-Lindau protein, which is true. Okay, if you remember that von Hippel-Lindau protein must inhibit or degrade hypoxia inducible factor. So if it is defective, hypoxia inducible factor will still remain in the circulation, leading to production of erythropoietin, which finally increase RBC level. So therefore, if there is defective von Hippel-Lindau protein, there will be secondary electropoiesis. Very, very important. B, impaired HIF1 alpha function. HIF is a
Sorry about that.
HIF is a protein which is required to stimulate the production of erythropoietin. And when erythropoietin comes into circulation, it finally stimulates erythropoiesis. So if HIF is impaired, erythropoietin production will reduce, therefore there will be low production of erythropoiesis or low production of RBCs. C, so this one is false. C, pulmonary dysfunction. So like heart disease, lung disease, okay? Of course, when you have lung disease, gaseous exchange will be impaired, therefore you'll be hypoxic. Whenever you are hypoxic, okay, there will be hypoxia, which will induce hypoxia inducible factors HIF and leads to erythropoiesis. So causes of secondary erythropoiesis can include pulmonary dysfunction. It is true. Now this JAK2 mutation is false. JAK2 mutation is found in Polycythemia Vera. Okay, very important. Okay, so the rationale for using hydroxyurea in the management of Polycythemia Vera includes. So if you want to manage Polycythemia Vera, if you use hydroxyurea, A, to increase percent hemoglobin F level, nope, this is not true. To prevent cycling crisis, no. To avoid tyrosine kinase, no. To prevent thrombosis, all these are false, okay? So 6, the biochemical findings in individual with Polycythemia Vera includes. So normal serum erythropoietin is false. Erythropoietin is either low or because erythropoietin does not play a role in Polycythemia Vera, okay? So B, hyperuricemia, true. Okay, there is hypermetabolism, there is purine breakdown, and ATP leads to production of high uric acid, which can lead to gout. So if there's gout, definitely there will be accumulation of urea or uric acid in serum. So you see serum, or you see hyperuricemia, high level of uric acid in the serum or the blood. So it's true. So C, increased LDH in peripheral blood. LDH is ubiquitous. When there is a malignant condition in this nature, PPP will be there. So it will increase. This is increased alkaline phosphatase in leukocyte. Increase alkaline phosphatase in the leukocyte. Okay, so it's true. LAP will increase. So take note of that. 7, causes of pseudopolycythemia include pseudo. We spoke about that, right? Long-term diuretic therapy. Yes, I spoke about this. Okay. B, impaired PhD2. No, this one they are talking about secondary, okay, but we are talking about pseudo. This is false. Alcohol consumption is true. Chronic lung disease is false, okay? So in Philadelphia chromosome positive chronic myeloid leukemia, so you are saying a patient who is Philadelphia positive chronic myeloid leukemia, okay? A, the underlying translocation is between chromosome 9 and chromosome 21. It is false. Okay, if you have watched my video on chronic myeloid leukemia, the mechanism of Philadelphia chromosome translocation. So the translocation is not between 9 and 21, but it's rather between 9 and 22. Okay, 9 and 22. Very, very important. Where the chromosome 9 will change to 22 to form the Philadelphia chromosome. So this is false. B, the BCR-ABL fusion gene imparts anti-apoptotic potential to the myeloid cells. Is it true? So this gene is a tyrosine kinase, okay, which increases malignant cell proliferation and reduces apoptosis of the myeloid cells. So it doesn't impart anti-apoptotic potential. It rather, depresses or reduces apoptosis in the marrow cells. That is why it is very bad. Okay, so it's false. C. The fused gene leads to production of 145 kilodartin protein. No, it's not true. It's 210 kilodartin protein. Those with Philadelphia positive. So the last one. So this one is false. The last one. The fused gene leads to enhanced tyrosine activity in the malloid cell. So the fused gene leads to enhanced tyrosine kinase activities in the malignant cells, not the malloid cells. Okay, very important. So 9. Philadelphia chromosome positive chronic myeloid leukemia is managed by. So Philadelphia chromosome is managed by A. Triosinase kinase inhibitors. Look at this. It is triosinase. So the examiners, they are very bad. Instead of triosin kinase, he said tyrosinase kinase. So if you are a student and you don't take care, you also choose and you say, oh, I've passed, but you are failed. So it's tyrosine kinase inhibitor, not tyrosinase kinase. Okay, so it's false. B. So dasatinate, what is a secondary tyrosine kinase inhibitor. Okay, so this is true. Hydroxyurea is true. Fludarabine is false. Okay, so then 10. In the examination of the 10 peripheral blood film of a patient who is suffering from chronic myeloid leukemia, the usual laboratory findings include 2 to 5% myeloblasts. False. Myeloblasts are very, very low. Even they normally don't appear. So 2 to 5% is high, man. So this is false. Myelocytes are there, promyelocytes are there, metamyelocytes are there. Okay. So the last one, the techniques that could be used to detect Philadelphia positive cells when undertaking differential diagnosis in chronic myeloid proliferative disorders. So the FISH technique is true. Okay. PCR is true. Light microscope is false. You can't use light microscope to see Philadelphia chromosome. No. Or you can use cytogenetics. Okay. So folks, I think that one is cool on Polycythemia Vera. Okay, I'll try to subscribe for more of such videos.